Uh, the Wednesday Web Jam is a community. It's the community of the folks that are here on this jam and that have been showing up for, we're almost closing in on 100 sessions. That's over 2 years we've been running Wednesday Web Jam. And we are clumsy innovators, cheeky co-creators, hungry learners, compassionate facilitators, change makers, and ignorant experimentalists. That's our group. That's where, basically welcoming everyone into this community to learn and fail forward together. And that is our motto, failing forward. There is no other way. We do have ground rules as to how we collaborate and interact together in the Wednesday Web Jam. And it's pretty simple. It's the stuff that your mom and dad taught you probably when you were growing up. Be kind, be nice, and be empathetic. This is a safe space for us to learn together. And we just really want to make sure that everybody has their best behavior on. But, that doesn't mean we don't get into some sticky subjects if we need to, but let's just all be kind to one another and make sure that this is a safe space for and welcoming for everyone. With that, I would like to introduce our magnificent guest today, my friend Alwin Put from Belgium. Yes. Alwin is an author, a facilitator, a design strategist, trainer, design thinker, human-centered designer guy. I met Alwin, I don't know, it's maybe been 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. We are of a like mind, I believe, and he's a wonderful human being, has written an amazing book that he's going to introduce. That's not the purpose of this session, but I will recommend it at the end. But a man who speaks from the heart and has great experience and a bright mind. And Alwin's going to be walking us through a session about facilitative leadership. So Alwin, welcome. With that, I'm going to stop the screen sharing and hand it over to you, and we can get started.
Hey, thank you, Mark. Wow, what an introduction. That is really nice. I think that's the best one that I've ever had. So thank you for that. Today we're going to talk about facilitation or facilitative leadership. And I guess a good just warming up question to everybody here would be, what does facilitation mean to you? What do you think about facilitation? And you could just answer in 1 or 2 words, descriptive words of what it means to you. And maybe we'll just do for fun a waterfall, meaning you put it all in the chat, but not press send yet until we say go. And then we have this waterfall. So
type it in the chat in Zoom, but don't hit send until we say. So take a few seconds to what does facilitation mean to you?
Yeah.
Ready? Are we ready? Alwin, I'll let you take over.
Yeah. So are we ready? Oh, I see there are already things in there.
It's the water is falling already.
The water is falling already. So go, go. You can press.
Go. Send. Oh my goodness! Look at that. Awesome.
Let me read out some things. So encouraging ideas, enabling, allowing, bringing out innovation, getting comfortable. Yeah. Oh, that's a nice one. Empower others. Help and capacitate others, make things easier, showing what's possible. Yeah, listening, thoughtful thinking guide, helping others is a lot in there. Making boring meetings enjoyable. Yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, I think basically we all think the same thing about facilitation, that it enables, it sometimes even empowers, it gets the best out of people. And like Mark said, I did write a book about it just because I thought that sometimes facilitation in organizations was a bit marginalized, not seen as important enough, while I saw that it could make such big difference. And even more, I met people in training that had a natural knack for facilitation, but didn't even know about the value they could bring facilitating. So I thought it's important that people understand how powerful facilitation can be, and also how anybody could potentially be a good facilitator. So maybe it's just a knowing what is important to do as a facilitator, and also getting a level of confidence to do so, and to take up that role when it's important. So and with that, I maybe like to add, maybe like to put facilitation even more on a pedestal, because I totally agree with everything that's in the waterfall. But I like to even say that facilitation might be the purest form of leadership, because I feel that in facilitation, there are not necessarily egos involved. It's not a title that you work towards. It's not an installed form of leadership. It's not a promotion. It's something you do naturally because you want to get the best out of the people in a co-creative moment. And there's no status to be maintained. There's no leader image. It's actually a role where you're giving, where you're enabling people, where you're holding the space for them to become, you might say, a coherent group of people. And I think that's such a powerful, wonderful concept. And maybe even a form of leadership that can be decentralized, that anybody could do, that anybody could apply. And I'm thinking that, if you look at within the system of related stakeholders that want to improve something, if you want to achieve something within a system, maybe it's best to look at those moments of co-creation, of interaction within that system. If we uplift those moments of co-creation with good facilitation, maybe we uplift the whole system, we let the whole system thrive. So I think facilitation can be very, very powerful. And that's why we call it facilitative leadership. And yeah, maybe we exchange a bit more thoughts on that today, on how everybody could then become a facilitative leader, and what your experiences with it is. So yeah, Mark, and now I'm talking all the time, but I'm very curious. What's your take on facilitation yourself, and what's your take on being a facilitator?
Yeah, I think a lot of the suggestions, the meanings that people put in the waterfall in the chat are spot on. But I think maybe what's interesting is to kind of get folks to jump in and let's talk a little bit about what that is in the Miro. Is that
Yeah.
what we're going to do next?
Yes, yeah. Let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. All right.
So do we have a link?
Yep. There's the link in the chat. So most of you, I think, because I've seen many of you here, have used Miro or Mural. This is an online whiteboard. Just click on that link and your browser should open up a tab with this. We're going to be working here. And Alwin, are we going to be screen sharing at the same time we're doing this, or just have everybody follow you?
Yeah. Would you like me to share it, or will you?
You go ahead and share.
Yeah. Okay.
And lead us through this.
Yes.
Thank you.
So on the board, because we're going to get active now. On the board, there is a second question that I'm very curious about. So I'd like to know from everybody in that second step, what is often your challenge when you're facilitating? What can make it hard for you to facilitate? What is a challenge that happens often when you facilitate? A challenge for you as a facilitator? And there is this spectrum, and fight or flight means that it's a very stressful challenge to you, and rest and digest on the bottom means that it is it's a neutral challenge. It's a challenge, but it's okay. You can deal with it. So you can position it wherever you feel it fits. So your facilitator's challenge, and whether it's
Yeah, and put it on that spectrum. And for anybody who hasn't used Miro before, if you go over to the left-hand side of your browser, there's a little menu, and the top, just below the arrow, there's a little sticky note icon. If you click on that, it pulls up a bunch of sticky notes. You can just grab the color you want and pull it over into the Miro board and start typing in that sticky note.
So let us give you a minute or two to add in some stuff on Post-its.
Great.
It's clear we all face the same challenges in facilitation. It all looks very recognizable.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah. Let's have a look.
Yeah.
So we see unruly people. Yeah. And you never know what to expect unless you know the team that you're facilitating, but sometimes you don't. And the resistance of people around you and getting them along, and with that, a lack of engagement. A poorly framed challenge. That's such a tough one. Mark, do you see any that you want to call out?
Yeah, no camera on, right? Getting people engaged. And in particular, I also wrote dealing with technology, and this whole dynamic of doing virtual facilitation like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
That's always a challenge. Giving participants equal time to voice. Some techniques for that, but that's I like the way that that's put in the rest and digest, right? Like that's, it sounds to me like that's something that somebody is able to do, right?
Yes.
It's really good. And tell us a little bit about this spectrum and why you use the spectrum, Alwin.
Yeah, because you know, there's a lot of challenges you have as a facilitator. Clearly, you all see them here, and some of them can really, put you in a state of stress. And the unfortunate thing of being in a state of stress is that you've got this narrow focus on things. It takes away your capability as a facilitator to sense what's happening in the room and feel empathy for everybody that's part of this co-creative session, and make sure that you involve everybody, you see every little detail happening. Once you get stressed by stuff that's challenging you as a facilitator, you lose that capability. And it's such an important part to be a good facilitator. It's almost totally based on empathy and having a sharp mind at the moment, and sensing people. So that's why there's a spectrum in fight or flight, because some things you can easily just, deal with. Other things can put you in a state that can become really challenging to facilitate well. And I guess what I like to do, because maybe it's also nice if I just share a bit of theory with the group, just some thoughts. What I like to do is explain a bit. I've got these 3 competence areas that explain very simply what a facilitator can think about to make sure that they facilitate well. And it's a very simple framework that helps people not only understand how they can see themselves at the moment as a facilitator, but also what they might want to develop further on, and what can really help to also tackle these kind of challenges. Mm-hmm. But maybe before we jump into that, we also give the chance to anyone in the audience. Do you see anything that you want to point out, or that you would like the author of the post-it to maybe elaborate a little bit on? Is there anyone that wants to emphasize any of these or share an anecdote? Not yet, maybe.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Anytime you need help moving it along the conversation, I'm here, by the way. But I always have something on my mind. But it's interesting that because I the whole wanting to engaging with people and those, intuitive, sensitive responding versus balancing the technology and managing the tech. I find, and then when you bring in mural into the facilitation, it's like, really, and don't forget the chat. It's like you're doing so many things while still, trying to read people's faces and being very responsive to the nonverbal cues, as well as listening. There's a big balancing act. So to really do it well, you need more than one person.
Oh yeah, and that makes me think, Dana, of how that's different in person versus virtually, because I think you're doing those things when you're in person, but virtually it's like you have these different channels that, how do you know whether people are being engaged? Well, you can get them to put things in the chat and they're reacting, so they're engaging to some degree, but their videos are off, right? Like, it's weird. Like, there are these different channels of engagement in a way.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Oh, and then also you have the side conversations going on. That's interesting too.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
When okay, this person's talking to that person, I can tell.
Right.
But there's a lot going on that you don't see on the surface when it comes to at least online facilitation.
Because on top of that, now you have the hybrid meetings. Hybrid is a big thing now in a lot of organizations. And then you have a bunch of people sitting in the same room, having conversations amongst themselves. And then you have people sitting by themselves somewhere virtually, still trying to follow this conversation. So it's yet another point of distraction, right? Anybody have any experiences with hybrid?
Definitely.
Any good experiences?
I mean, there are some. It's a very, very tricky thing, especially when you're dealing with different time zones too, on top of all that. But yes, I'm sure I have good experiences, but that just does make things 10 times more challenging.
Yeah.
Right. So Alwin,
yes,
we have another thing. You want to tell a little story, I think, right?
Yes. I want to tell a little story. Oh, and I see that it's already at the last slide. Oh, revealing everything. Yes, I've got a little story. I call it the Facilitator's Trinity. Some of you have already heard about this. There's even, Mike is amongst our group, and Mike has even helped with developing this. So, Mike, I'm sorry if I'm boring explaining this, but you can always chip in and add stuff.
Not at all.
So it's the Facilitator's Trinity. Basically, it's 3 simple focus points, or you might even say competence areas, that a facilitator can keep in mind, can even further develop to tackle a lot of the challenges we've talked about, but also to create a really good co-creative moment. And I thought it might be valuable just to explain these 3 very high level. It might trigger your interest or curiosity. And then afterwards, we're going to have a bit of a conversation in duos, Mark, on a specific part of it. So let me explain. I'm not going to take too long. So first of all, so if we think about leadership, so leadership, I would say in essence is getting the most out of people, stretching their capabilities, make them feel that they're doing a satisfactory job and they're growing. So it's getting the most out of people as a leader, right? So that's in essence, you could say that's a big part of leadership. And if you then look at facilitative leadership, that basically is getting the most out of people within a co-creative moment. So as a facilitator, you're applying leadership and you're doing that within a specific moment of co-creation. And with that, you are the architect of that moment. You're the guardian of the purpose why people co-create in that moment, and you're the owner of time. And those are 3 really important roles. It creates, you might say, a sub-reality, because it doesn't matter if the CEO is present or any big title or the president, whoever it is. In the end, it's your moment that you create for these people to co-create and get to better interpretations together. So that's facilitative leadership. And then if we look at, well, how can we then, what is that exactly? How can we apply that? How do you get people to co-create well? And how do you apply facilitative leadership? In the end, it's driving coherence between their thoughts and their thought processes. That's what you do. And you're trying to get them to arrive at a higher interpretation together, not a lower interpretation, not compromising, not giving in, but actually building on each other's thoughts. And I specifically say coherence and not cohesion. It's not about sticking together. It's not team building. It's coherence. It's resonance between people's thoughts. That's basically what you're doing as a facilitator or as a facilitative leader. So the big question is, well, how can you do this then? And it's not, it's not so complex, although it sounds big, driving coherence. In the end, what you need to do is you need to get people to do stuff together. You need to get people to think together. and you need to get them to believe in themselves and in a common purpose. So you need to connect them with their hands, their heads, and their hearts. This is also a common concept within leadership. So connecting people and doing stuff and thinking together about it and in believing in something together and believing in themselves that they can actually contribute there. And to get more specific, to be able to achieve that, to get people to do things together, you need to guide them. You need to provide structure. You need to make it easy and appealing for them to participate into something. I like to call that the practical side of facilitation. On the other hand, to make them think together, you have to make it worthwhile for them to fully engage, to bring their experiences, their opinions, their thoughts to the table, and willing to listen to others and try to connect them to each other. It's a little bit the social side of facilitation. So you're conducting. And then if you want them to believe in something together, you need to catalyze them, empower them to take action. You need them to be clear on the purpose that fuels them to take action, and you need them to believe in themselves. They can actually make a difference related to what they're trying to achieve, and that's catalyzing them into action. That's more the inspirational side of facilitation. So 3 clear angles to facilitation, which you are applying to drive that coherence, right? As an architect of the moment, as a guardian of purpose, and as the owner of time. In that moment, you own that moment. So if we get more detailed on that, but still quite high level, what does that mean, guiding? It means, first of all, that you build trust with a group. Because if you build trust, if they think you're the right person that will bring them from the starting point to the desired ending point, then they will allow you to facilitate them and even bring up controversy and maybe opposing opinions, and sometimes even making it a bit harder and going more into depth. You can demand stuff of them. You can ask them to work hard on a certain activity if they trust you. And they trust you if you can provide this clear and inviting structure with a clear track of progress. So they see it makes sense to step in this journey with this person that's facilitating this, and we actually believe that we're going to end up at a better place together. And then there are more probably, but I've defined 3 important things to actually build that trust and to guide people. And one is your narrative, obviously. So how you build your narrative, how it is a logical sequence of building blocks that moves towards the desired ending point. That is something that's important to do. But also how you create in that narrative, each time that people need to do something, a form of liftoff, immediately get them going on activity, straightforward, clear language, and fueled with a lot of willingness, lift off. And then at the end, each time they achieve something within that narrative, within the journey, a proper moment of closure so they feel progress. That all adds to building trust. And then a big one that is often perceived as one of the most challenging aspects of facilitation, that is building this time experience. So time is not a fact. Time is an experience people have. And the way you as a facilitator provide that experience makes them feel or very pressured and rushed and always not enough time, or very comfortable and time is in abundance and we're in this vacuum almost working together, almost in a complete flow state. And that's what you do as a facilitator. You create that time experience. So with your narrative and the way you move from building block to building block and the way you create this time experience around it, that builds trust. They trust you that you're the right person to get them to that ending point. So that's that first part where you connect them to do things together and you build trust because of that. Now, if you have that trust, you can actually start conducting their conversations. You want to make those conversations more qualitative. You don't want those conversations to just go round and round about the same thing or the loudest person to dominate it, or you want those conversations to go in depth and people to listen to each other. Conducting basically means that you direct their attention to blind spots or to certain things that somebody has said that you think has a lot of potential and needs to have more attention of the group. So directing attention with trigger questions, with orchestration, that actually helps for a higher quality conversation. And you can think about it as where attention goes, energy flows. So just as you're nurturing your plants at home, if you give them a lot of compliments and attention, they grow. So it's the same thing in conversation. If you direct people's attention on certain points, those things grow in the conversation. So as a facilitator from the sideline, you are privileged to see where a conversation might go. and then you direct their attention without obviously giving the answers already, just with triggering people, triggering their thoughts, triggering blind spots. So that's conducting, and that people allow you to do that if you have their trust. So if you build a great structure and it's great time experience and it's very enthusing what they're doing, and then they believe in that narrative, then you can conduct those conversations when it matters. And then once you get there and you're connecting them with their heads, you get them to think together and build on each other, then you can also drive ownership by fueling their belief in the purpose, what they want to achieve, why they're there, but also in themselves, that they actually have great contributions to this, and that as a group, they're really making a difference. You can do that by connecting them to the purpose again and again, not in a rational way, but an emotional way, finding that hook why people feel like, oh, it's important what we're doing. Oh, that's right, that's why we're doing. And it means a lot. I can see that. And also coach them, make them feel that each time they do something, it matters. They matter. What they do matters. They belong in that team and they are a significant part of it. So connecting and coaching. And those three things as facilitator, if you apply that and you keep developing yourself in those three things, usually you get to a good coherent place with a group. You know, ultimately you want to get them in this kind of flow state where they really bounce off each other's, but by doing guiding, conducting, catalyzing, you're getting there. You're driving that coherence. So not rocket science, simple framework, but in its simplicity, it often helps to just understand what you need to do as a facilitator. But then as a final point, the only way to have such a sharp mind to guide, conduct, and catalyze, and the only way to also sense whether people are connecting or disconnecting or with it or engaging, and the only way to feel enough empathy for the group to really create that safe space is if you yourself have an open focus. So if you're, for some reason, I don't know, pressured by time, pressured by goals, came out of heavy traffic, had a tough call with a client before, could be any type of reason. If you got stressors that work on you and you can't manage your state and you step into this moment you have created with a narrow focus, with a stressed state, it's really hard to do proper guiding, conducting, and catalyzing, right? So, and that's, for me, one of the most interesting aspects of facilitation, which I think is not covered a lot. It's how does everybody manage their state? How do you get yourself in the best open state to be able to be a great facilitative leader? And maybe it's not even within that moment of facilitation, that moment of co-creation. Maybe this is important for all types of leaders, to see opportunities, to see potential. How do you manage your state so you can get the best out of other people? How can you be in your best version to get the best out of other people? And that's where, guide, conduct, and catalyze. There's a book about it. There's training about it. We can dig deeper in that at another moment, but this for me is really the most interesting part. So what I would love to hear from all of you is, what are your techniques, your maybe secret things you do right before you go on stage and give a keynote, or right before you step into that space and you facilitate that moment and you need to be at your best to do so? What are your techniques and your things you do to get you in that state? And yeah, I'd love, Mark, if okay, I'd love to potentially split us up in random duos first. Maybe you can both have a one-on-one with somebody just talking about or sharing what you do. Do you listen to a song? Do you walk barefoot across the grass? Do you take a walk? Or what do you do? Do you whistle? What is it that you do to get you in the right state?
Awesome.
And then,
so
yeah,
go ahead. So what we're going to do is we are going to put you guys in a breakout room with one other person and just have an intimate conversation about this. There are random groupings, and I'm just dropping the question that we want you to discuss. How do you manage your state as a facilitator? You can define that however you want, facilitator. Think about what Alwin's presented. Think about what we talked about a facilitator being in some of these challenge areas that we have. I suggest an easy way, if you want to take any notes, is just to type that in your chat in Zoom, because that will only appear for you and the partner that you have in the room. And then you can have that to look at and refer to. You can write it down on a piece of paper, or you can just remember it. We're not going to be using Miro for that right now. So I'm going to go ahead and open the breakout rooms. A few of you will stay back here in the main session. We'll have a chat about it as well. We'll see you guys back here in about 10 minutes. Ready? I'm going to hit the hyperspace button. Here we go. Boom. And if you get a little warning to say I need to go into a breakout room, please do that. Cool. Fika.
Hi.
And we have Daniela. I don't know if Daniela is able to put her video on. There we go. Hi, Daniela.
Hi, Daniela.
Welcome.
So yeah. Mark, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know. I mean, we're interested in hearing what you guys think is facilitation. What is your actually more, how do you manage your state? I think that's, and let me just, if I can just say one thing, because I was thinking about this as you were doing your presentation. I think this idea that you as a facilitator have energy, and that the people that you're around have energy, and that you're exchanging this energy between them, and the energy takes all kinds of different forms. Your example of like having a really stressful, like being stressed when you go into the meeting that you're facilitating can blow everything up, right? It's almost like, what do you do, right? Because you can't control what happened to you. You have to figure out how to just reset. And it's interesting because as I was listening to you, the next session, next week is, I think, going to touch on that. It's something that Colin's going to talk about, but it's about like managing your personal energy. And I know, Alwin, you're really interested in that. Anyway, I just wanted, I'm going to go back to you and let everybody else talk.
Yeah. So yeah, Fika, you already unmuted. Do you want to share any of your techniques or ways in which you manage your state to?
Yeah. Well, what I've learned in my experience as a facilitator is that you can't have the high energy all day. Or maybe you can manage to do the high energy performance for one day, but then the day after you are exhausted. So what I have learned from the start, I guess, is to get the sweat on the back of the participants instead of on my back. Well, that's one thing. And how do you do that? By really think through the flow of activities during the day. And sometimes when I notice I'm still so much of giving energy, then I just have to take a break, and then I just have to breathe. And people accept that. You don't have to talk to everybody in the breaks to make everybody feel happy. So take a break yourself is, I guess, one of the first lessons that I got. Well, I never took a break because I needed to have happy people in the breaks as well. But you need to have space for yourself.
Yeah,
to
a breather.
Be able to give.
Yeah, so let them work. That's what I picked up. Let them work. And on the other hand, make sure you have breaks yourself. So don't be on all the time. Daniela, go ahead.
Sorry, Miriam and Jana, I think you may have gotten thrown out of your rooms, but welcome to our group. We're just having this discussion about how you manage your state as a facilitator. You're welcome to jump in.
Thank you, and sorry for joining uninvited, but thank you.
No worries at all. So Daniela, I was just wondering, do you recognize what Fika says, or do you have this other thing we can learn from you and how you deal with stressors and to get in the right state as a facilitator?
Well, it's really hard to deal with stress, especially when you are young. And I'm young. I haven't facilitated that much, either in meetings or anything. So it's hard to be a facilitator, and it's good to understand what other people and their experience, and that's why I am here. And I believe the hardest thing and what I do to remain a little bit more calm is to surround myself with people that I know a little bit better and that can help me to take a break or talk about something that's off the topic regarding the meeting. And I think that's my way to cope with the stress when facilitating.
Right. Do you also sometimes choose a co-facilitator that will, can put you at ease maybe sometimes, or have side conversations with? Or
yeah, actually, I've had a co-facilitator, and she helped me a lot regarding a meeting with the big group. And it was good because one of us would talk, the other would take notes and be attentive to the rest of the people. And in the next time we were changing. And I think that's really important to have someone that can back you up if something goes a little bit wrong.
yeah.
Alwin, real quick,
Yes.
can you unshare your slides?
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah. Thank you. Awesome.
So yeah, then we can see each other. Yeah, important. Miriam, you might be just dropping in. Not sure if you picked up anything from what we said previously, but we're like Mark said, we're just talking about how we can manage our own stress right at that moment that we have to facilitate or lead a meeting. And I was just wondering, do you have certain things that you do? Do you have techniques or ways in which you can manage it?
Yeah, I picked
And
up.
we have 1 minute, and then I'm going to close the breakout room.
Ah, okay.
Very
Wow.
quickly, very quickly. No, not stress about time. No, what I discovered I do is that I get some ally before I start. Somebody that will make the people, influence them a little bit in the positive side of collaborating. I chat a bit. We're gonna do a bit this. We're gonna do a bit that, and then I sense, and then I'm like, she's in or he's in, and then. But because I do it at work with colleagues, that's harder because they know me, but if I have them in, then I know they will help with the energy. So that's what I do sometimes. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I can't really tap into that because Mark is going to close the rooms, but we can talk about that further when we are back with the larger group. And I see everybody's coming back slowly. Hello, Courtney.
I just dumped Dana.
You dumped Dana.
I saw the leave button and I go, oh gosh, we have 58 seconds left, and I clicked the button. So
I was waiting to.
No problem.
Disappeared.
Those little red buttons are really hard to resist. It's like
I dream of my screen.
Exactly.
But I was leading her to tell me what it was she did to prepare for teaching, a particularly challenging session.
Yeah.
If it's very challenging, I definitely have someone to help you with some of it. It helps me a lot if I have an assistant, honestly. Makes a big difference, whether that be, sometimes I facilitate for an organization and it's one of them that helps me, or if it's a student in the class who volunteers, but I definitely would delegate some of the roles.
Well, and we planned to have you write on post-its what you learned, if you were inspired by any of the techniques that any of your discussion partners are brought to the table. But maybe it's more fun to just have a bit of a conversation about it instead of jumping into post-its. So does anybody else?
Alwin, I'll go ahead and put the link to the Miro back in the chat. And as we're going along, people can take notes in there, but we can also just have an open chat. So why don't we do that? If you guys scroll over to the right in the area that has the big 4 on top of it, feel free to type any notes. But what we want, the question we want to explore is what was new or surprising about what you discussed in your breakout room?
Yeah. What did you learn from the other person? Is there any cool technique you learned or something that you didn't expect? Anyone wants to share? Otherwise, Dana is going to share because she's my person that's going to fill up the silences. So
Right?
We know Dana
Keep
will
it
jump in.
rolling if you need it.
I have something.
yeah, Stephen.
Yeah, Peggy shared with me that she uses visualization to see herself, in a facilitator role, achieving what she wants to achieve. And I'm very familiar with visualization for sports. Like you hear a lot about athletes visualizing themselves winning a game or going down a course. Like where I was introduced to it was with ski racing, where they said visualize the path you're taking down the mountain and how you're going to make the turns and how you're going to stay on top of, keep your line high. And that's where I was introduced to it as a teenager. I hadn't thought, I do think about it professionally, but I hadn't thought about it specifically for facilitating.
Love that.
Kind of set yourself up and, keep, as Peggy said, try to keep the noise down, in your head. And I thought it was a good advice, good idea.
That's a really nice one. I heard also people say that they use the mirror often. So then they, before the session, just have a private moment and then looking just in the mirror to themselves and just be kind to themselves and give themselves some encouraging words. And that seems to work miracles as well. So it's kind of related, Stephen. Thanks for sharing. Anything else? Anything that surprised you or a different approach? Must be. Come on. Or not surprising then. Something that's obvious.
Well, preparation is key,
Mm-hmm.
right? So all of those things you talked about the structure of what it is that you want to bring so that you can bring forth from a group so that they can feel safe to share together with each other and with you. And something that Dana and I talked about, and maybe you're going to ask this later, but, being self-reflective, being vulnerable with that group so that you can build that trust. So
Yeah. And on that first part, what I also talked about a lot with some people is how, there is this contradiction between you're preparing as much as you can to be completely, fully prepared for this moment. But then when the moment comes, you need to let go of everything. Because if you don't let go, you might get stressed about it. You might follow it too strictly. So you have to be able to, at one moment before your workshop, let go of control and then ride the waves, Do you recognize that?
Yeah, I think that to be fair, I've learned how to facilitate and I'm still learning. That takes either an enormous amount of confidence or it takes an enormous amount of experience and practice to be able to do what you just said, Alwin, to be able to just let go, right? And it's also, I think one of the superpowers is being vulnerable, because if you show vulnerability and openness and honesty and humility, then I think the people will give you a break, right? But I think that when you get to the point where you can let go, that's I think a point where you've done the preparation and you may not have to have a ton of experience, but you have a plan, and you're able to trust your plan, right? We one of the mantras we always have is trust the process, right? If you have a process, make sure that you just trust that process and believe in it. And sometimes it'll get you where most of the time it'll get you where you want to go. If it doesn't, you're going to learn from it, right? And the worst thing that could happen is, you have to do a little bit of extra work afterwards to fix things. But yeah, good point.
Yeah.
I think it
Go
also
ahead,
helps.
Mikey.
Yeah, I think it helps to kind of let go of the fact that, well, when I started anyway, I thought, I had to be able to solve everything and it was all kind of on me. But I think the whole thing about, kind of having shared ownership is as well, if the session actually isn't really going to plan, that at one stage you can actually discuss this with the group as well. I've had it where, I've had planned to do something and I just noticed that people need a lot more time to have a conversation. And rather than, panicking and going, oh, we're running out of time, I might turn to them and go, I think this conversation is really important, but it might mean that we won't get to X. are you guys okay with that? And then, you know, it becomes kind of a group decision. And I found that, that really helpful. So actually using the group to help me rather than trying to solve it in my head.
I think building on those two, it's a question of being able to identify in the moment what's actually important here. And of course, you're trying to balance and juggle that on many levels, because you might have one or two individuals who've been very involved and others who haven't been. It might be a sense of how the whole group is in relation to either you as a facilitator or another facilitator who's working there. And I agree with Mark that I think, certainly in my case, that's come with experience, that you kind of learn to let go a little bit and not to be kind of quite so uptight. And as he said, it's trusting the process.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when you prepare well, you have a feeling that, you know, you're going to bring something that they have to do. But on the other hand, you prepare well, and you prepare for the unexpected, because then you have a blueprint in the back of your mind, and you have a possibility of getting there. That doesn't mean you have to do it. And if like what you said, Mike, if then, you know, you're almost doing like a servant leadership, you're serving them, you're trying to help them to get to the best place. And if that means they have to do something different, and you acknowledge that and you help them to get to maybe that other place, they see you as really somebody who is bringing value to them and respecting what they want to do at that moment, and even enabling them. So they allow you then to also facilitate even more, right? So
Yeah.
Can I ask something?
Oh, yeah. Yes, Peggy.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it okay, Mark, or no?
Yeah, no, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just like, I was just shaking my head, Mark, when you were making your conversation. I was like, no. Why was I doing that? Because I remember at least 3 times in my life, and my life has been a long time with facilitation, at least 3 times where, because that facilitation was cramped, or maybe it had nothing to do with the facilitation, but the group was, all the trust didn't matter in the world. They didn't want to give me that trust. Yeah. And so my question is kind of like, don't other people also have that happening, where they have the negative thing happen? You know, you get thrown into some facilitation thing and you're just like, oh my gosh, where did I just land? You know, it's the hornet's nest.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're talking about. And again, so I'll just be quite honest with you in this respect. Sometimes, because I came out of tech and I'm African American, sometimes it's just they don't like you. That's all there is. You're an easy target, and you've got this power struggle going. And I think just understanding what the power dynamics are is important, and identifying your allies, so to speak, is important. But I know exactly what you're talking about. And Peggy, am I kind of touching on something there with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also just
bring it up. I bring it up for like other people who even say like, you know, I haven't been facilitating that long or whatever. And Mark, I absolutely agree. It's like, you do want to build trust, and you want to open up, and you want to let go. And yes, we all want to do those things.
Right.
But in the very end, you have to just don't forget that it is a company that hired you maybe to do something if you're an external. And you are external, and you are you are dispensable. Yeah.
I was feeling the same way, Peggy, when he said that. Honestly, it really depends. Like if it was Wednesday Web Jam, cool. Be yourself, your personality, trusting. But some environments, no, they don't. Yeah, I've worked in toxic environments, and people don't want to come to facilitation, or maybe they don't want to talk about diversity, and things of that sort. So that's a different kind of animal.
I admit that what I was saying was an idealistic situation. Doesn't work all the time. Good points. I do want to kind of bring it a little bit back to these 3 points that Alwin was talking about: the guide, the conduct, and the catalyze. And trust, energy, attention, and ownership. And I think that those are still very good guidestones for facilitation. I definitely feel that we're going to have an interesting backstage discussion. So for those of you who have never been to a Wednesday Web Jam, and for those of you that have, a reminder, we have a half an hour after this, after we get to the top of the hour, to have just an open discussion off of YouTube. So let's get back into that, because I think that I'm really interested personally in those conversations. Alwin, one quick plug. I want to, for the benefit of the group, also just point everybody to Alwin's website, which I think is the place, well, I know is the place where you can find more information about his thoughts. And it's captainsofleadership.com. That's the name of his book. And it also has information about courses that Alwin does that are very intimate. I think a cohort of 6 people that you take through.
Only small groups. Yeah,
small groups, which I think is really, really interesting. Would encourage y'all to have at least a look at that. But maybe 1 or 2 last comments from you, Alwin, if you'd like to close things down before we go to the backstage.
Maybe just a good side note is the title is Captains of Leadership, and it's explained in the prologue where the name comes from, because it doesn't mean a lot on itself. But I think more important is the subtitle, which is Build Your Facilitative Confidence. And basically, I felt that after books on creative confidence, it was time to talk a bit more about facilitative confidence, because I noticed with a lot of people in training, but also facilitating together, everybody has some feeling around vulnerability of being a facilitator. Everybody has some type of little more of stress level around it. And it's nice to be open about it to each other, because I think it makes us better facilitators with just acknowledging that it's not always easy. So it's building your facilitative confidence, which I think probably makes more sense than Captains of Leadership.
Well,
yeah.
When I read the title and I've read the book, I thought, God, it sounds a little corny. And then the story hooked me, right? The story in the prologue, I was just like, oh, that's so cool. But what are other people going to think? And then I just want everybody to know that when you read the book, you're kind of getting a really good picture of who Alwin is. He's just a really nice guy. So thank you for writing that and taking the bold move to do that. I encourage everybody to have a read of it if you can. So Alwin, thank you for coming and facilitating this conversation. You've done a great job. Everybody, a big round of applause for.
Thank you, everyone, to be part of it.
Yeah, fantastic. And as we normally do at the end of our sessions, just a little bit of closing ritual here for everyone. Next week, we have another genuine, beautiful soul, Colin Skelton, who's going to come and talk to us about somatic intelligence.
Which that's a good one.
During during the breakout in the main room, I just shared how what Alwin's talking about and what this whole facilitation is about how you manage the energy between you as a facilitator and the people that you're facilitating. And I think what we're going to hear next week from Colin is all about that. Colin's an amazing guy. I guarantee you, if you show up, you're going to get something out of it. So please do join us next week. And just to remind everybody, we are a community. We call ourselves a village. You are part of that village now. You're welcome to follow us. We're on all the social medias. You can scan that QR code if you want. Not sure what that does, but maybe it does something I'll talk about in just a second. This is kind of the community that we have that are all volunteers. We've all poured a lot of time and energy. There are a couple of us here. I think Donna's here and Steve is here. I don't know that anybody else in the team is on this session. And then finally, because we're all volunteer run, we kind of have a few little expenses. And if you want to just buy us a coffee, you can scan that QR code. I'll also put the oh, it's already in the chat. Thank you, Donna. And you can click on that link in the chat and buy us a coffee. And with that, folks, we are at what we call backstage. I am going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop the YouTube. And I want to thank you all for showing up, and we'll see you next week.